There's another incident that has really shocked and horrified people, including the Pope. We can go ahead and put this up on the screen. He spoke out and called terrorism this incident where two people, a mother and her daughter, were killed while they were at a Catholic parish. One of them went out to go to the bathroom and they were targeted by the IDF. He says, some say this is terrorism. This is war. Yes, it is war. It is terrorism. Going on to say that is why the scripture affirms that God stops wars, breaks the bow, splinters the spear. Let us pray to the Lord for peace. This is not the first time that the Pope has referred to Israeli actions in Gaza as terror and has called for an end to the hostilities. We can put up the statement from the Latin Patriarchate. Let's put this up on the screen in Jerusalem on the shooting and killing of two women in that Catholic church in Gaza. So these are some of the details according to this local Catholic organization. Around noon today, December 2023, 16, a sniper of the IDF murdered two Christian women inside the Holy Family Parish in Gaza, where the majority of Christian families have taken refuge since the start of the war. Nahida and her daughter Samar were shot and killed as they walked to the sisters' convent. One was killed as she tried to carry the other to safety. 7 more people were shot and wounded as they tried to protect others inside the church compound. No warning was given. No notification was provided. They were shot in cold blood inside the premises of the parish. The spokesperson or top aide for Bibi Netanyahu was asked about this attack in particular, asked to justify it. Let's take a listen to how he responded.
So I would reject the categorization of the words he used, cold-blooded killing. That would indicate a deliberate targeting of civilians. That's something we don't do. We don't shoot people who are going to church to pray. It just doesn't happen. That's not the way the IDF operates. That's against our rules of engagement. We don't know exactly what happened, and I would urge people not to jump to conclusions. There have been in the past all sorts of stories put out by Hamas and their supporters accusing Israel of all sorts of terrible deeds, and in the end they've proved to be wrong. And we're talking about a combat area. There's exchanges of fire between Israeli forces and the Hamas terrorists. To say that Israel is deliberately targeting Christian worshippers, that's a terrible accusation that is unfounded.
Would you acknowledge, Mr. Regev, that the bullets that killed these women were fired by the IDF?
I do not know that to be true. Obviously, we're looking into it. Could they have been killed by Palestinian terrorists who were shooting at our people indiscriminately? I don't know. But we've got to be very careful. There have been countless stories since this conflict began, where reports out of Gaza, people are 100% sure that Israel did something terrible or this, that, or the other. And in the end, it's been proven conclusively that that was not the case. And people have had to retract their words. Unfortunately, some have refused.
He is correct. It is a terrible accusation. And if he cares about getting to the truth, he would allow an independent investigation, but I wouldn't hold my breath.
Right. Well, actually, what's come out since then is that, quote, the IDF says that an initial review says that IDF troops who were operating against Hamas terrorists in the area operated against a threat that they identified in the area of the church. The IDF is conducting a thorough review of the incident. And the Catholic Cardinal Pizzaballa, he wrote in his letter, actually not only identified them, but said, Krystal, that 7 more people were shot and wounded as they tried to protect others inside of the church compound. No warning was given, no notification. They were shot in cold blood, as you said, inside the premises of the parish. The letter was then republished completely in full by the Holy See, which is the Vatican news agency. So, I mean, obviously this is representing a split. Now, it shouldn't matter whether you're Christian, Muslim, or whatever, but I think what it does highlight is that there are a lot of other constituencies who may not necessarily have said anything, but who are now highlighting some of the situation inside of Gaza. And I actually saw a pretty significant, Krystal, reaction by the Catholic community here in Washington, who are even in the Republican Party at this news. You'll remember, too, when Justin Amash's relatives were also killed, you know, in this incident, because I think, and I hate to say this, but with a lot of these people, it's genuinely undeniable. Like, they obviously have nothing to do with Hamas. You can't even say that they're like sympathizers or anything. They're literal Catholics.
Right.
And this is the Latin Patriarchate. As I understand it, traces its roots in the region all the way back to the Crusades. So they've been operating in the area for hundreds and hundreds of years. And this goes to the delicate balance of the religions. And, it probably at its best at a time when all three could live in the region in peace. Obviously, they've also been warring now for some time. But Gaza is not a monolith. We like to think of it, I think, as a place where it's just like, all Islamist, and it's like some Muslim Brotherhood, Hezbollah, Hamas and PIJ, Palestinian Islamic Jihad sanctuary. It's just not. It's a diverse society in the way that many, think of Syria, Druze, Christians, and other ethnic groups that have lived in the region with thousands and thousands of years of history. I personally know actually some Palestinian Christians. They trace their roots back there just as long as everybody else. So
yes,
it's a tragic incident, I think. And to me, actually demonstrates again that the IDF and its lack of discipline. I don't know if you saw this just yesterday. I saw a girl, IDF soldier, who apparently participated in some dare where she stood in front of a piece of artillery while it was fired as some sort of like TikTok dare, and is now, quote, under investigation by the IDF. It just seems like people there are playing games. And a lot of these people their level of discipline. And again, you can even see, we've been contacted actually too by people who served in Iraq. They're like, I did 4 tours in Iraq, and they're like, I've never seen anything like this before. The amount of, the lack of discipline here. And one of the reasons why I keep harping on discipline and training is that even our reservists, guys who are police officers in the National Guard, they took a lot of training. They were held to very strict and rigid standards whenever they're deployed to Iraq, specifically for this region, because the consequences of a single bad incident are obviously ridiculous. I mean, here you have 2 people who were allegedly sniped, by the IDF. They don't even appear to deny it, honestly. Even though he suggested it was Hamas.
Like,
but
who knows?
You've now gotten the freaking Pope calling you people committing acts of terrorism. That's why you're supposed to. And I understand, bad things happen in war, but like, we're looking at a pattern here of disciplinary issue after disciplinary issue after lack of conduct issue, where the leadership, both from Netanyahu all the way down to the tactical level of the IDF, they just don't seem to have a very good control of their soldiers.
Yeah.
Which is, and this is just a military judgment. You can put the morals and all that if you want to. The question is like, are you accomplishing what you're set out to do? Because it's clear, when you lost the Pope, in a war against Islamic Jihad, I don't know what's going on here.
Yeah, well, you're right to lay out, why highlight this incident when there have been now, 10,000 children alone killed by Israel in this conflict, and the vast majority of them, of course, Muslim children. It's because it is the war of words between the Pope and, the spokesperson or top aide for Bibi Netanyahu, basically calling the Pope a liar or calling into question what actually happened here. And it is the fact that, there's no way that you can smear these people as somehow aiding and abetting Hamas, somehow being, legitimate military targets. Everything about it screams violation of international law, from the location where they were, this Catholic parish, walking over to a literal convent, to the fact that they are women, to the fact that they are Catholics. Everything about, this religious minority, which has already been through quite a lot, living in Gaza here. So everything about it screams outrage, and there really is no justification for it whatsoever. And that's why it's caught so many people's attention. At the same time, there are many other horrors. It's hard to pick which ones to cover every day. Let's put this up on the screen. The UN is calling for an investigation into yet another hospital raid. This one is at Kamal Adwan Hospital. There were a number of patients still at this hospital. The doctors who were there said that a number of these patients died of dehydration because of the raid on this hospital, the fact that they had been completely cut off from any supplies. A nurse who asked that her name not be used didn't provide a specific number, but said that a number who had non-fatal injuries died of dehydration. There were also a number of infants who died when their incubators were shut off from a lack of fuel. What really extra horrified people, I suppose, is some of the images that came out afterwards. Let's go ahead and put this up on the screen, of bulldozers from the IDF coming through and plowing through the courtyard, and buried under this rubble are dead bodies. Some reports I had seen indicated that these bulldozers had actually mowed down people who were alive. What the nurses and doctors on the scene are saying is that they had been forced to bury patients who had died in this courtyard, and that the bulldozers plowed over these already dead bodies. Of course, one of the nurses there said they shoved them over without any respect of human dignity into what looks like a pile of rubble. You can only imagine if it was your loved one who was there receiving this treatment after they had died. And just as a reminder, the number of hospitals that have been targeted here, according to Euromed Monitor, 23 different hospitals around the Gaza Strip have been targeted. And overall, including those hospitals, 126 health facilities, that includes ambulances, clinics, and hospitals, have been targeted.
Yeah, I think it's a tragic situation, obviously. And it's the more that these spread, connects back to, and why are we structuring the show this way, is I think all of it traces back to the level of animus against us. And this is, the difficulty, and kind of like how I like to look at things too. There's the Israel situation, which we're trying to keep abreast of. There's a bit broader geopolitical situation, though, of which the powder keg. And this is where I'm a little bit conflicted. On the one hand, I'm deeply annoyed that the entire sphere around, it's like Israel right now is the sun, and all of us are just orbiting around it. All of American politics. Our defense secretary and national security advisor are spending more time in Tel Aviv than they are here in Washington. Mm-hmm. So personally, I find that incredibly irksome, because I'm like, hey, we actually have problems here. We've got a whole thing we got to talk about with U.S. Steel. At the same time, why do we and all these policymakers have to dedicate so much time to it? Because a single instance can set the entire world on fire. And we have to find a way here, I think, of trying at best to bring things to a way where we don't ignite, Middle East region against us. And just think about this purely in terms of interest. I tried to make people think about this too in terms of Ukraine. And now here, the amount of blood, capital, treasure that we've already spent in this region and now continue to dedicate to this region, not to mention polarizing all of American politics on a third world ethnic conflict, is insane. And yet the consequences, just simply because of the investment of so many of these global populations, means that it also is one which could decide the fate of our nation and Joe Biden's future too, whenever it comes to the 2024 election.
And for me, it's not only that, but it's the fact that, there are lots of horrors unfolding around the world at any given point in time. So people say, oh, why focus so much on this one? Like, why do you care so much about this one? It is unparalleled what Israel is doing right now in Gaza in terms of the level of civilian death and in terms of our direct complicity. And you can just look at the comparisons to previous mass bombing campaigns. You can look at the comparisons to civilian death ratios in this war on Gaza versus previous conflicts. I mean, Saagar, you made this point earlier, and you've made it for a long time, which is completely accurate. They're making what we did in Iraq and Afghanistan look like we were angels. And there was plenty to criticize there as well, which we did. This is on a whole other scale and level. And so to watch all of this unfolding, and the number, almost, very little dissent in Washington, even though the public is crying out for a ceasefire and demanding an end to the hostilities and wanting to see humanitarian relief come in, to watch the number of people who can just justify things that I could never imagine people being able to justify. That's the other reason to, care about what is happening here. Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.